Good morning, Brian, and welcome on to the Northern Ireland Business podcast powered by Action Coach Northern Ireland. Brian, your company BS Holdings Ltd. If you can maybe give us a bit of a brief background of what the company does, how long it's in existence, and your role within the company.
Yeah, certainly our company's basically in mechanical and electrical engineering, but it has a very large focus on future energies that are emerging. Specifically packaged plant room manufacture, gas, oil, biomass, RHI, hydrogen. In 2012, we provided packaged heating and hot water systems for the largest Tesco's in Europe. We build all sorts of solutions, shipping them across the UK and Ireland. We also represent numerous manufacturers, be that semi boilers, Atmos wood and log pellet boilers, Yazaki absorption chillers, and the fuel cell store. And again, we ship these mainly to the UK and Ireland, sometimes as far as New Jersey or Sweden. I started in my father's business, should say, in 1982. I took over as CEO in 2000. I formed that same year BSH or BS Holdings Ltd to give it its full title in 2000, and I've been CEO in that ever since.
Okay, so 25 years. And
Yeah.
Brian, obviously you were in the family business from a young age then, and qualifications, education, did you go straight into it, or did you go to university, or what was the career path like for you?
No, I found, and I still am a believer in this, a lot of people go to straight from college or straight from school into university. They ramp up huge debts. They pick courses that might not necessarily have a fundamental use in the country that they live. They're very aspirational, of course, but then at the end of the university course, they find it extremely hard to get a job. You know, they have depression. They're working stacking shelves in Tesco's. Not to demean that, but it's a job. But no, I started out in another career pathway, and that was going from school straight into work, and straight into work going then to a technical college and spending, I think, best part of 7 years. 4 years were on my electrical engineering, and once I had completed that, I went into electrical and electronic engineering, and then was successful in getting a degree course in that. At that point in my life, we were so busy in work, and I'd reached such a position as in management that I couldn't afford any more time off to go to Korea and do another degree. So I just left it at that. So that was my academical training
Yeah.
in my early years. But even since that, I have been on, since I think it was 2020 or 2021, we got involved in hydrogen. I went and did a Birmingham University course in hydrogen. So I keep up to date with any advances there are, being, a member of SIBC, Energy Institute, that sort of thing. So we're always progressing. Every day's a learning day. You never come through a day in life
That,
that you don't learn
that,
something.
that's for sure. That's for sure. And it's so important that we take time out to educate ourselves every day as well, because
Absolutely.
the world is always changing. And tell me, your father's business, what was it M&E as well, or?
Yes, it was electrical mechanical engineering, more in the construction industry, however. Um, and it was very focused on construction, working with construction businesses like David Patton's and Sons. Um, but what we found was, or what I found was, coming into it in, like, we had 60 odd employees at one stage, and coming into it at that stage, you were always trying to find reliable, reputable contractors to work with. However, what I have learned, and this is where we come on to the like of my target markets and so on, what we do now, you know, we found it extremely difficult to get clients to pay us the construction industry in Northern Ireland is geared to be a race to the bottom. The clients wants the cheapest price, and then they're surprised when they get the cheapest price that it maybe wasn't a complete bid or any extras that they want because their consultant's design wasn't as good as it should have been. They're getting hammered for every penny that the contractors have to do extra. If they hadn't the race to the bottom, they'd be getting a better quality job. So we got out of that rat race. Now, in 2012, the synonymous three letters RHI in Northern Ireland was our target market. We completed around £3 million in sales for Lookers PLC in England. They at that time owned Charles Hurst's, which you'll know in Belfast. We won several local and national engineering awards for the RHI systems that we produced. We were the only company to develop an RHI system which provided chilling as well as heating, and that allowed Lookers across UK to remove a lot of their air conditioning systems, and that replaced those air conditioning systems by a 20-year income stream provided by government. Moving forward then from that period of time to 2021, we got involved in what I see as the next energy spectrum, and that's going to be hydrogen. We delivered the UK's first mixed gas hydrogen training room, and again that took many awards. It is based in Ballymena and puts gas safe trainees through their the experience to change onto hydrogen gases, which will ultimately reduce our national greenhouse gas emissions. We built a second one then for Yeovil College last year to permit them to do the same, and in southern England. Now, the strange thing was, I find it strange anyway, the government and the Education Authority want to bring in this new technology and new gases and new training, but yet the like of Yeovil College, the Education Authority wouldn't let them put hydrogen into their college. So how on earth is the college going to do training? That was the conundrum. So what we did for them was, on their new campus, and they're only getting the new college built at the moment, we put one of our training pods into the campus, so they do the theoretical training in the college, and then they walk 50 yards out to the practical training room and do whatever practical they need to do. So that's how we did it for Yeovil. Maybe, the government will move the regulations and see a bit of sense. I don't know. But we also then, we're collaborating at the moment, or I'm collaborating at the moment with the developing an electro-hydrogen chemical compressor. And that's a compressor with no moving parts. And if successful, that'll be a world changer in hydrogen technology and how we move forward with hydrogen gases. It's in its early stages of low TRL, but we've had some success. We're confident that it can move and it can do it. I also then moved into, I've patented, or have a patent pending, on a penta generator. And unlike diesel or petrol generators, this is no exhaust pipe. It delivers 4 energies simultaneously and also produces water at the same time. And again, totally zero emission green. I've developed a roadmap in discussions with government to bring a new style generation to the national grid, and we're in talks with them at the moment about that. And that really is based upon wind farm energy. When the energy is too great and the grid is no use for it, I want to provide a hydrogen production unit on that wind farm site and let the electric produce hydrogen, which will then be stored on the site. When the wind isn't blowing, then we repurpose the electrical connector that goes to the grid. And indeed, that will allow a hydrogen power station to be located at those same premises, and we will have zero emission electric generated onto our grid, just as the wind turbines had been doing. The beauty about this concept is that what a lot of the listeners and you may not know is that the thing called curtailment, whenever the national grid says, hold on, we've got too much wind on the network or too much electric on the network. We can't use it because everybody's in bed and businesses are closed. Please close your turbines down. And they send a signal to automatically close those turbines down. You and I are paying for that privilege of them closing the turbines down. It's in our electric bills. Billions every year is charged against you and I paying for turbines to be switched off. Now, why should you and I pay for a resource that we don't use? Let's not pay for it. Let's produce hydrogen and let the hydrogen run the power stations. I've spoken to our national grid in Northern Ireland, and our national grid operators say, yes, that would work. However, we're not allowed to do it. We need to go to the utility regulator. It'll take several years worth of work. And I've said to the national grid in England and Westminster, well, look, folks, curtailment's getting worse every year. It's nearly doubled in the last 2 years because we keep putting more wind and allowing more wind onto our network. People are putting more solar onto the roofs of their houses. So they've said, right, we need to change, we need to do something. So they've taken away our concept to look at it and see would it be fundamentally sensible to try and decentralize power stations to our arrangement. So that's basically what we do, or what I do.
Exciting, very exciting times and very cutting
They
edge,
are.
but also probably a lot of frustrations with red tape and regulators and all that. I can imagine, which we'll come on to later. And
Huge amount.
what does the team look like in BS Holdings?
We have 5 employees. My wife is the financial director. That's 6. And we cover electrical, mechanical. We have a manufacturing workshop in Antrim, and that's where we build all of these energy cabins, and then we ship them. Aberdeenshire Council's been very good to us. They took 3 cabins last year. We're in current talks with them for a further one, a large district heating one this time. Um, as I said, Mid and East Antrim Council, we built the training unit for them, and over really pre and just after COVID. Yeovil College, we ship them everywhere, depending on what you want.
Yeah.
Even dare I get into the orange and green, heaven forbid, but Rangers in Glasgow took 2 of them. That was a pod that actually heats the pitch,
Okay.
so they can train all year round.
Okay.
Um, I I just don't care. At the end of the day, everyone's a customer, and
Of course.
we get on with business.
Of course. And come here, a 15-year-old Brian, what was the dream?
At 15-year-old, I actually wanted to start out to be a farmer. Um, and I looked at it, farming, but farming is still a very, very hard job. You never get very few holidays. And then my mum said to me, should you not think about going into your father's business? Not that it'll be any easier, because it's never easy working for a father. But he'll need help, he'll need assistance. And I thought, well, yeah, okay. So I started, as my son has now started. I started at the bottom, went in with the lowest of the low, cleaning sewers, you know, doing pipe work, doing electrical systems. Went in and worked with the boys for those 5 or 6 years to start really from the bottom and learn what it was to cover every role in the business.
Yeah. And tell me, Brian, was there a family farm at home?
No, no, there wasn't. We had done a lot of work for farmers, as in, their heating and plumbing systems, and we'd get very friendly with a number of them. So I actually, as a young teenager, would be going down and staying at their farms, getting up at 3 in the morning to go out and do the milking. You know, that was just, I loved it.
Yeah.
But
No.
when I saw their life in reality, and having a dairy herd, and not able to get away on holidays and whatever, I thought, this isn't just. And also in the back of my mind, I want to be creative. I want to be, and I didn't see that engineering thing coming through in dairy and farming.
Yeah. No, as somebody who was brought up on a farm and was very involved at a farm from a very young age and really enjoyed it
Mhm.
and got huge satisfaction and reward from it, it was definitely, I always say, there's never harder days. I'll never have to do as hard a days or a work as I've had to do in my teenage years.
That's right.
And
That's
but
right.
there was no money in it. It was a vocation, a
Yeah,
vocation.
that's right. That's right.
And that's so what 25 years as CEO as such, or what's the biggest learnings?
Uh, Probably biggest learnings. Probably the challenge in engineering of seeing the future or trying to predict the future, trying to predict the direction that the world is going to go in. When I was growing up, the man of the day for me, because I was at a very young age, I was getting into scuba diving and swimming and that sort of thing, was Jacques Cousteau. Now, Jacques Cousteau, for the younger generation that's maybe watching this now, is the David Attenborough of today. But Jacques Cousteau was going around the world. He was studying, he was making TV programs, and it was showing you the change in the ocean and the change in the biodiversity. And this is going back to the 70s and 80s, that the way that the water world was changing, plastics. And even back then, looking at that as a young teenager growing up, going diving myself off the North Irish coast, and looking at the pollution and so on that we were pumping into the water, I was thinking to myself, this can't be good. Man is not, we're not looking after and treating the world the way we should.
Mhm.
So that was a major driver for me to look ahead and say, right, how can we change these things? How can we reduce the use of plastics? How can we stop pumping all this CO2 out into our atmosphere? You could see on later times when I was diving across the world, you could see sections of corals having died because of extreme heat, the water getting too warm. And you're thinking, well, that's man-made. In my belief, it's man-made.
Mhm.
I know in the Trump world it's make believe, but in my world it is real. And that was a driver for me to try and see, well, in a very small way, what can I do to help change this? And that perhaps was one of my earliest memories of getting a drive, getting an ambition to do something,
Some inspiration.
some
Um,
inspiration.
yeah, what I took from that, is nobody can predict the future,
No.
obviously, but you have to, in business, you have to be very aware of it. And so. Is there anything for our listeners or any certain things in your specific industry where you go or take time to look for inspiration?
First of all, I got very good at electromechanical engineering. And then I focused in that way on what way we could change my specific technology area to help. Now, if you're in film editing and, you know, TV studios and so on, then no, you're not, you're not really going to be creative and be able to influence change. Um, Apart from maybe the media and helping in that way, getting the news across. But so it's really down to my belief is that we should have a greater focus in Northern Ireland, especially to drive young engineers. Now, when my son was coming through college, coming through school, career days I went in, and an awful lot of it was rooms packed with PCs. You know, studying Microsoft Word, film editing, creative arts. And I'm thinking to myself, guys, we in one of our projects we worked on for the studio that done Game of Thrones. And a bit of a funny story, but I wasn't interested in Game of Thrones, didn't know anything about it, and it was happening to walking through the studio to get to a particular job, and I walked past what later I learned was the original massive throne that they sat on. And I remember coming home after we'd done the job, coming home and sitting at the tea, and my wife and my son were very interested in the Game of Thrones. And it happened to be in the TV, and I looked at the TV and I went, I walked past that today. And I went, what? And I said, yeah, I was in Game of Thrones today, and da 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 da. And when I was coming back from that particular meeting and walking through I was talking to one of the editors, and I said to them, a lot of I find it very difficult in my former years trying to get good engineering students to come into our field of work. And I said to him, I think the schools are far too much focused on the creative arts and film editing and so on. And he said, Brian, come with me a moment. And we walked over, and there's this car park of cars. He said, do you see many Jaguars and Ferraris and so on sitting in this car park? I said, no. He said, that's the TV editing car park. And he said, so it's not a very profitable job. He said, and you have to work long hours for it. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, well, we are putting so many of our young people through that route, and what have they got at the end of it? Maybe nothing.
Yeah.
And the whole education system seems driven that you get paid now for bums on seats. They give you a grant for someone enrolling in a course, but whether that's the right course for them or not, universities and colleges don't really care now.
Yeah, we could have a whole different podcast on the education system and the flaws and how it's actually it's another big business.
It is. But the problem for the world now is, as we move more, or we're trying to move more to electrification and these green technologies, you can't find the qualified engineers. NIE can't get the engineers that they want. ESB can't get the engineers that they want because the generations are starting to retire, and they're not teaching them to bring the new people on stream.
And in fairness, I think, Brian, there is a huge shift recently of people those students finishing, secondary level education, not going into university, and now actually going and getting, going into engineering, going and getting
what I call day release.
Sorry.
What I call day release. Yeah. We worked for 4 days, and on the 5th day, you went to the college to do your theoretical training. That's how I did 7 years of work, 7 years of my education.
Yeah, apprenticeships. Apprenticeships, and everybody everything through life as you get older, it's trends. And you just see where apprentices are hot, then they're cold. And it's almost like they now come back hot again because there is a huge gap. And you're right. Those guys, engineers and stuff like that, they're getting paid more than consultants and doctors and different bits of pieces, that people that are obviously very, very smart and have done really well in their A levels and that, and got the grades to get in and that, but the financial reward doesn't match the energy and work and the effort that they paid to get
and coming out maybe with £50,000 in debt.
Totally. Come here, biggest challenge currently facing for yourself and the business?
What I see, it's not a challenge per se for us, but in general for the world, for my children, for my nieces and nephews, it's the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the reduction of plastics. As I said, Jacques Cousteau, me diving across the world, I've seen it firsthand. And that is, to me, what we need to be focusing on as the older generation, looking at it and saying, how can we set the young generation on the correct path of where the world needs to go and where we need to go. And indeed, in Northern Ireland might be a very small dot on the world map, but if you don't do it somewhere, and I'm a believer in, if we can, like, look at the man Ferguson developed the 3-point hitch for a tractor. Dunlop tires. Mr. Dunlop was from Northern Ireland, or from Ireland. We've had so many inventors and creative people coming up through uh, Ireland or Northern Ireland, and I think that we can give that benefit to the world. Interesting fact: 66% of the world's mobile crushing stone equipment comes from Northern Ireland.
Probably within a well, definitely 10-mile radius of where I'm based.
Exactly. 66% of the world's mobile crushing equipment. That shows you what Northern Ireland can do.
Yeah. And that's very much all engineering.
All engineering. All engineering. Had to be started by clever men, had to be developed by, I should say, politically correct, clever people, and supported ably by mid Ulster's drive and support. But that to me is what we can do and what we need to keep doing. We need to keep making Northern Ireland a spot on the map that people go, hold on, we need to talk to them.
Yeah. And Brian, the one thing there it comes across, you're very passionate about, the emissions and stuff like that. If there's one thing that you would advise our listeners to do in their daily life, or take action in their daily life to reduce that, one practical thing, nothing to do with business, just one practical thing, what would it be?
That's a hard one.
Because there is a shift. The younger generation are much more aware, but there's a lot of noise around and a lot of stuff. Is it really reducing and making a difference?
No. At this point in time, I don't think that there's, because we have general household recycling and so on and so forth, that's all being done, and councils are doing as much as they can to encourage that. I think we're in a point of inflection in the world where we need to wait on the next new age of technologies coming through that will help and support and drive us in that direction. And I'm a very large believer in hydrogen, because when we use hydrogen, we have zero emissions. And I think we look at Wrightbus in Ballymena, 1,000 odd employees, 156 million I think they got in grant aid to put further factories out in Malaysia and so on. So that technology, again, being delivered by a Northern Ireland company, I think we need to embrace that, and the younger generation need to embrace that as a future fuel, a future technology. And that will make a massive change. If you imagine seeing all those diesel trucks change, not necessarily to battery, because batteries don't work on the trucks, they're too heavy and not enough power, but the like of the hydrogen, where it can drive just as far, and all you have is water coming out of the tailpipe. I think that's where the world would change.
And do you think that's a realistic, replacement with all the, to replace petrol and diesel, and that hydrogen is a realistic?
Oh, absolutely. I've been to 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I had an opportunity to go to Seoul, South Korea, and Ballymena Council were interested, as all our councils are interested, in buying hydrogen bin lorries and hydrogen equipment, to demonstrate to the public that it is safe and indeed it works. And first thing, when I was walking down the escalator into the trade show, what was standing in front of me but a hydrogen bin lorry? Never seen one before. So I went over, started to look round it to see what it was. This well-dressed gentleman from Korea came over, talked to me, and I explained to him where I was from and my background and what I was interested in. And He pulled the panels off, let me see the nuts and bolts of it, how it works. They have 50 lorries running in Switzerland for the last 4 years, having ran up over 1 million kilometers between them, all running in hydrogen. Um, I asked him, because it was a business opportunity, I asked him, look, would you mind, this was Hyundai, would you mind coming, giving us a truck to Northern Ireland? We have Wrightbus over there. And quite honest and genuine, he said, Mr. Hood, we are that busy with the left-hand drive market. We can't afford to get interested in the UK and having to change our designs to right-hand drive. That's fair enough. But that and he invited me into Hyundai's headquarters, and I'll tell you, it's easier getting through Heathrow Airport with security than getting into that building. But um, you know, going in there, seeing what they're doing, seeing their hydrogen cars, might find it a bit of a nerd, but I said to them, look, do you mind if we get into one of your Naxos and could we take it and get it filled? No problem. Get into the car, drove down to a local petrol station, filling the hydrogen car at the hydrogen pump. There's 4 other hydrogen cars pulled up behind me waiting to get filled. So when you look at their economy and like South Korea is no bigger than Ireland.
So the next question. So I wasn't aware even that hydrogen cars was an option. So that's an ignorance from my point of view. And but is the challenge then? Why is there not a bigger appetite from governments to push on with using hydrogen cars, or is it a
fuel
reduction in levies from the
fuel? Fuel is the problem.
Is it the levies or the fuel?
No, fuel. They can't get the fuel produced at a sensible price. Now, when I say a sensible price, we need to have fuel down around between 10 and 15 pounds per kilo to equate to diesel. If you take the fuel that they're having to buy for the TransLink buses and Wrightbus, 3 times that, because no one in Ireland is making the fuel. The fuel has to come to Ireland via the Haitian boat. It's the only ferries allowed to carry it because of its nature. So I think that if and this is where, as an example, Wrightbus could sell more hydrogen buses to Northern Ireland and Ireland, but not when the fuel costs that much. It's a bottleneck. And it's the same for the fleet owners when I go and see Montgomery's or Woodsides or Moy Park. Would you change over onto this? Okay. Can we get a hydrogen truck? And then when you say, well, we could get you a demonstrator hydrogen truck, okay, where do I fill it? Well, there's no hydrogen filling stations in Northern Ireland. There is for Wrightbus, they have their own. There is for TransLink, they have their own. But you as a public citizen or a fleet owner can't pull into TransLink and say, can I fill up? The answer's no. Yeah, so we're so far behind. And I suppose if you look back 8 years ago, we were at the same stage now in hydrogen as we were with batteries. You couldn't get out there in your battery car and find an electric charging point. Now it's a lot easier. And I think that will be the way to go. If I said to you, take as a council, you sitting in Mid-Ulster. Let's say Mid-Ulster wanted to put up their own wind farms, produce their own electric. But when they produce their own electric, when the government say we need to switch it off, you make your own hydrogen. They make their own hydrogen and they put that into their own vans, their own bin lorries, their own equipment. That means that they pay themselves for the fuel. They're not paying BP, they're not paying Esso, they're not paying Shell. The money stays within the council.
And surely, Brian, any of the wind farms with the technology you've talked about at the start there have the potential then to produce hydrogen and sell hydrogen to, instead of having to come on a ferry,
yep,
to TransLink
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of getting over those initial steps and making it work.
That's right. The first wind farm in Ireland to do it was Long Mountain, just outside of Sharkin. It has an electrolyzer there. It's currently going through its commissioning, and it will be the first pure green powered electrolyzer to make hydrogen, and hopefully it'll be selling its hydrogen to TransLink
Yeah.
for those 23 buses that we have. But again, ask yourself this: while Belfast is those 23 buses, they can't go any more than 100 miles out. So, you're never going to see them in Dungannon.
Yeah.
So we need to look at getting the network wider, just as we needed to do with battery EV for cars, for trucks and so on. We need to get that network going out there to bring this to reality.
And surely, Brian, hydrogen would be a lot greener than electric cars in terms of the battery, the minerals being used,
Yeah,
the batteries
it
and
is.
stuff like that.
Well, if you imagine if you're creating the hydrogen via a wind farm, well, it's a pure green molecule.
Yeah.
So that is the only emission coming from that is water from your tailpipe.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's a whole question over the batteries and the lifespan of the batteries and what happens to lifespan or with the battery whenever
yeah.
it's
Now,
finished.
to be fair, the hydrogen produces electric. Sorry, the fuel cell in the car produces electric. So it still needs to go to a small battery.
Yeah.
And the battery still an electric car.
Mm-hmm.
But it means instead of that car only doing 300 mile, it could do 600 or 700 mile. And for me as a fleet owner, I have a Ford truck. I need to pull on a trailer 2.5 tons for some of the equipment that we have. If I put that onto a battery truck, I might get 50 miles. So while you may not see it coming in early for the cars, I think for commercial, for heavy goods, that will be the first point of inflection that we will see in Northern Ireland, being a change. Now, Woodsides, Montgomerys, all of them want to do it, but they're saying to me, well, look, we can't go battery because by the time we charge the battery, we've lost the truck for 8 hours. The weight of the battery is the weight of a car, which means we can tow less on the road. And if we plug 10 of them in here at our depots, we need to build a new power station sitting beside us to power us. And that power station is going to be running fossil fuel gas. So, in actual fact, you're not doing away with emissions. You're moving the exhaust to Ballylumford or Kilroot. You're away from your tailpipe.
Not easy, but
No.
there is. Come here. There's potential. There is potential. Come here. If you're looking back, what advice would you have given an 18-year-old? What advice would you give? Well, sorry, what advice do you give to your son now?
Looking back, I would say that you start in a profession, get very good at it. That takes hard work. It takes a lot of effort. Stay small, work with clients, try not to work with contractors or borrow money from banks, because when you borrow money from banks, you don't own the company, the bank does. If you can become good at your job, work personally with clients, and when you do a job, you will find that you will get repeat business. Northern Ireland is an awful lot of word by mouth. And if you do a good job for somebody, they will be saying to their friends, their family, their business colleagues, they did a great job for me, first class. Business leaders talk together. If one has a problem, they'll say, putting up a new factory and we're doing this here and doing that. Here, you should talk to them. those boys there did my factory. They've done a great job, and so on and so forth. That's how we get business. Do a good job, keep the clients happy, do it right first time. And you,
Yeah,
you need a dedicated professional team to do that. And we have a dedicated core of men that we keep. We hardly use subcontractors at all.
yeah. I always say people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, what's the BHAG? Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of BHAGs. Big,
No,
big,
what's that?
big, hairy, audacious goals.
um,
What's the BHAG?
I get up in the morning and and the reasons I do, I get very excited by a challenge. And the challenge working with the leading chemists in Queens, um, the researchers there, the technical challenges of being able, the like of the patent pending for that Panta, being able to bring it to life and show it and demonstrate it to people. Um, that is what I find very rewarding. Again, getting back to our normal core of business, a client will come to me and they'll say, "Look, we want a new heating system for maybe 6 different academies and swimming pools and so on, district heating. What do you think you can do?" I'll go away, I'll design that for them. I'll not charge them. I'll design it, come back to them as a concept and say, "Look, is that what you want?" And discuss it with them in depth. And you begin to build a rapport with them that they trust you. And if you, as the saying goes, you deliver what it says in the tin, everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant, brilliant, Brian. Anything else you'd like to add or say to our customers?
No, just there's no easy way to make a pound in this world. You have to work, and you have to work extremely hard. And to me, you have to work harder than the next person because they're just working equally as hard to try and make a living. And get into a niche where you can deliver or you can do things that you don't have a lot of competition in and a lot of others can't do, and that will make you a success. You'll be able to get better reward for that.
Brilliant, brilliant. Work hard, build trust.
That's
That's
right.
taken away.
That
Brian,
is.
it's been a pleasure on that. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure, having the opportunity to go through the podcast today.